I recently had the opportunity to refight the Battle of El Obeid using the Dominion of Spear and Bayonet rules, the rules that I reviewed just a short time ago on this channel. But first, a bit of an introduction as to why I'm interested in colonial wars, and particularly those in the Sudan. Back in the 1960s, I watched the newly released film Khartoum, which told the story of General Gordon and the attempt to relieve him when he was holed up in Khartoum. Incidentally, Gordon was born less than half a mile away from where I am recording this video now. The film starts with a very brief introduction as to the importance of the Nile and the Sudan and Egypt, and then begins with a depiction of the Battle of El Obeid. It starts with Colonel Hicks and his Chief of Staff, Colonel Farquhar, leading an Egyptian force into the Kordofan area of the Sudan. In the film, the barely trained and mostly newly recruited Egyptian infantry are shown as very tired, very thirsty, and on the point to collapse before the fighting starts. The fighting itself is shown as an ambush in a rocky desert valley, when the reality of the battle was that it actually took place in an area of scrubland and near jungle. And although the film depicts it as a battle that's over very quickly, the reality of it was that the battle actually lasted considerably longer. Now, Billy Hicks, or Colonel William Hicks, was sent to the Kordofan to really destroy what troops the Mahdists had gathered together. His army was quite substantial, 8,000 Egyptian regulars, although most of them were barely trained, 1,000 Bashi-Bazouk cavalry, some tribal irregulars, some mountain guns, some field guns, some machine guns, and over 2,000 camp followers, which accompanied a baggage train with approximately 5,000 camels. So this was quite a large group of people to be marching through what was a basically inhospitable area. They were ambushed at El Obeid, and it is understood that the force almost immediately formed a defensive square and saw off repeated attacks by the Mahdists. And it's understood that the square didn't collapse for nearly 2 days. So these barely trained Egyptian troops certainly held their own. However, by the time that those 2 days were over, 1/3 of the Egyptians surrendered because almost all of the officers had been killed. And of those that did surrender and were later freed, only 500 of them made it back to Khartoum. Now, in my battle, the Mahdists had a cavalry unit, 3 ambusher infantry units, and 2 spear-armed units. And here you can see them depicted. To face them, the Egyptians had a cavalry unit, 4 line infantry units, and an artillery unit. And again, you can see them displayed below. They started off with the Mahdists having all their ambusher units in the front row, which is not surprising considering the advantage that ambusher units have in combat, with their cavalry and spearmen in reserve. Facing them, the Egyptians had their cavalry and 2 of their line infantry units, with the rest of the line infantry and the artillery in reserve. The first turn saw the Mahdist ambushers attack the Egyptian line infantry in the centre. They threw a 5 and destroyed them. The destroyed unit was immediately replaced by one of the line infantry units from the reserve. In reply, the Egyptian line infantry in the right sector was going to attack the Mahdist ambushers opposite them. But because the ambushers have the advantage of always firing first or attacking first in a turn, they threw a 2. And in reply, the line infantry threw a 3, with the result that the fighting was completely indecisive. In turn 2, the Mahdish ambushers in the right attacked the Egyptian line infantry opposite them, threw a 3. In reply, the line infantry also threw a 3, and yet again, the result was indecisive. The Egyptian line infantry then decided to attack the Mahdists opposite them in the right-hand sector. But of course the ambushers threw first, threw a 5, and destroyed that line infantry unit, which was immediately replaced by the last remaining line infantry unit from the reserve. The third turn saw the ambushers in the left sector attack the cavalry opposite them. They threw a 2. In reply, the cavalry threw a 3, and this fighting was also inconclusive. The newly arrived line infantry unit in the right-hand sector attacked the Mahdists opposite them, but again the Mahdists threw first, scored a 3. In reply, the Egyptian line infantry threw a 4, which meant that neither side again prevailed in this close combat. In the fourth turn, the Mahdist ambushers in the central sector attacked the Egyptian line infantry opposite them and threw a 6, which destroyed that line infantry unit. It was then replaced by the last remaining Egyptian unit in the reserve, which was the artillery. In reply, the cavalry on the left attacked the Mahdist ambushers, but the Mahdists threw first, scored a 3. The cavalry threw a 5 and destroyed the ambusher unit, which was immediately replaced by one of the spearmen units from the reserve. In turn 5, the Mahdist ambushers in the right sector attacked the Egyptian line infantry opposite them, threw a 5 and destroyed them. Because they had no units left in reserve, the Egyptians were now down to 2 units in their front line. The Egyptian cavalry attacked the Mahdist spearmen opposite them, threw a 2, and in reply, the Egyptians threw a 3, which meant yet again there was an indecisive result to the fighting. The sixth turn saw the Mahdist ambushers in the right sector outflank the Egyptian artillery in the centre sector. They threw a 6, and because they were outflanking, got an extra 1, so they easily destroyed the Egyptian artillery. This meant that the battle was now over because the Egyptians only had 1 unit left, the cavalry, and the result of the refight was exactly the same as the result of the original battle. The Mahdists won, the Egyptians were defeated. My conclusions from this refight are that this scenario, and particularly the balance of forces, worked well with the rules to produce a realistic end result. On paper, the Egyptians looked stronger, but the advantage of the ambushers of throwing first in any combat gave them a distinct advantage over the Egyptians in this particular battle. If the Egyptians had fielded skirmishers, the results might have been somewhat different. Having played this game, I have 2 more Sudan campaign scenarios that I want to try out, the Battle of Tamai and the Battle of Omdurman, and I hope to refight those in the not too distant future. That concludes my report of the refight of the Battle of Obeid using the Dominion of Spear and Bayonet rules. The more I use them, the more I begin to appreciate the subtlety in the simplicity of the rules, and I thoroughly recommend them. And I will be doing reviews of the newer books that have just been published in the course of the next week or so on my blog. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please seriously consider subscribing to this channel and also visiting my blog. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day, enjoy your wargaming, and goodbye.